Hi and welcome to this week's Life Lessons video. It's great to be back with you all. If you're a new viewer or if you're a returning viewer, please say hello below. We'd love to hear from you. So this week's video, we're talking all about making mistakes. Is your fear of failure stopping you from taking action or making important decisions in your life? Perhaps you're confined to your comfort zone because you dread making a mistake and don't want other people to judge you. Or maybe you keep making the same mistakes time and time again, either in your personal life or in your business life, and just want to step off this carousel of despair. Well, in this video, we're going to be explaining why making mistakes is actually a good thing if you use them wisely, how you can overcome internal resistance to making mistakes, and how you can stop making the same mistakes, the same old mistakes over and over again so you can move on stronger and wiser. Welcome to our Wu Wei Wisdom Life Lessons series. In each episode, we answer your questions, reveal the powerful life lesson, and offer you lots of practical tips and advice to help you live in balance, harmony, and flow. Okay, David, so the question we've had in on this topic is, I have a huge fear of making mistakes. I hate being judged or criticised, and I also set very high standards for myself, and I still dwell on past mistakes I've made. My fear of failing means that I always play safe and I don't take action or risks of any kind. And this is stifling my success. Can you help?
Yes.
Good.
Stop it.
So our teaching, David, really is that mistakes can be a good thing or mostly a good thing. Why is that?
Because it's a human thing to do, isn't it? We all make mistakes. I love these questions so much. And every week I keep pointing it out to you in every question you write in. Can you read that first bit again? Just that first sentence.
I have a huge fear of making mistakes.
There you go. What's fear? Red light. Mm-hmm. So we know the inner child is involved. We already know by that first sentence, I have a huge fear, not a little fear, huge fear. I have big red lights about making mistakes. Well, you've got a big problem because you're a human being. And guess what all humans do? We all make mistakes because that's how we learn lessons. And that's why we've called this series, we've done 20 or so now, life lessons. Here is a life lesson. Here's a really basic life lesson. It's going to be a great video because it touches on many of our areas that we've concentrated on individual videos. But this will cover the whole lot because if you are like this lady, I will tell you without even meeting this lady, the inner child is involved. Because this idea goes right back to childhood. This idea goes right back to pleasing your parents. This idea goes right back to external validation. This idea goes back to what other people think about you is important to you. It's not. What other people think about you is none of your business. This goes right back to pleasing people, all the stuff we've talked about. And more importantly, this goes back to what we call CCJ. Comparing, criticizing, being judgmental about yourself and about other people.
But surely, David, we're kind of brought up to believe that making mistakes, failing, is not a good thing. It's not a good thing to do that. And society, you know, it's all about how do I improve myself? How do I get better? How do I succeed? How do I succeed? I.e., how do I stop failing?
No, how do you succeed is you learn from your failures. So you're absolutely right. Most parents, their parenting technique to get the best from their child is to be critical. I call it critical encouragement. They think criticizing them, embarrassing them, showing them up, going, oh my goodness, oh look, you come, you didn't do very well there. Oh, look at your brother, look at your sister, look at the next door now. Comparing. And they believe that will encourage you. Mm-hmm. You know, it's almost like this passive control. They, in their mind, the way they analyze it is they're helping you by criticizing you because they think that you're going to spark you into life and say, I'll show you if you criticize me, I'll do more. And the parent goes, yes, there you are. I'm encouraging you now.
Yeah.
They don't understand that deep inside the inner child really wants attention, really wants to be loved, really wants to be validated. And when they get those criticism, you know, in the other videos I've talked about this rain of arrows flying in. Have you ever seen it in those old films where the rain of arrows come flying in? And that's how the inner child or the child sees it. All of this criticism comes in and it knocks them deep inside of them, deep in the stuffing, because it goes against their belief system. They have a belief system of how they believe parents should be.
So if we're negatively encouraged or criticised or laughed at or made fun of when we're younger for making a mistake.
It's like a dagger to the heart.
So that then sows a seed of self-doubt, a seed of not being good enough, and that we then carry that into adulthood. So that belief, that core belief.
That changes, let me just change your wording. That changes your belief system because as a child, you see your parents as authority. Yeah. You see your parents as the teachers. And
they know what's right and wrong.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's what we believe.
They don't. You're a parent now, aren't you? Do you know everything that's right and wrong? Can you make a judgment on every single thing and get it right?
No.
They're just human beings. But as a child, I'm not blaming you. You see, this is the whole point. There's no blame here. There's no criticism here. It's the understanding, and this is why it's life lessons. You have to understand these things. We're not blaming your parents. We're not blaming the child. We're saying, look back, change your perception, see from a different point of view. This is your parents. They probably was criticized. This is an interesting thing to do, you know. Look down your family line and see what they were parented like. I will almost guarantee you, if your parents were highly critical or set high bars for you to reach and was always trying to do, look what happened to them. Look what happened to their parents. And you'll see coming down that they were either criticized, demeaned, or tried to be pushed on. And you'll see it coming down the line and it's passed down to you. But you can stop it. And you can stop it now. Because you have the knowledge, and this is what we're passing over to you, and only you can stop it. This is why this is called life lessons. And I would change the word mistake. This is the life lesson I would offer in this video. Change the word mistake to life lesson. Instead of saying to yourself or to your child, you've made a mistake, I would be saying, what is the life lesson you need to learn here? What is it you need to learn? Why is it? I think the lady says she keeps on getting it wrong. Yeah. Why is it? What is it you're refusing to accept? Yeah. What is it you're refusing to take on? And you know what it is. You know what it is. No one else does. You know deep inside of you. And it's not the way I want it to be. And we're back to utopian and a Disney world.
Seeking perfection. Wanting myself to be perfect. So, So this idea of reframing the words, because the word mistake or failure or disaster, you know, we can kind of extrapolate it and put all these negative words on. That means when we label something as like that negatively, we're not embracing it as a life lesson. And these life lessons can be, you know, about really important things. So fundamental shifts and challenges and issues you've got to deal with in your life. Or it can be with like just simple day-to-day learning and experiencing something, not quite getting it right, and then trying something different and acknowledging and moving on. I think the key with making mistakes is, first of all, to not give it the negative label. Label it as the life lessons. Think about what I've got to learn here. Learn the lesson. Move on quickly. Do not dwell on it. And that's what a lot of people do. The lady says, I also dwell on past mistakes. And that stagnates the energy, doesn't it? That stagnates the energy of your creativity, your flow, your life.
Well, you said a lot there. And so let's go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
So all of these, don't underestimate and say, well, this is just a little thing. It doesn't really matter. This is what we're talking about. The way you view mistakes or lessons can matter so much because it can almost interweave. It's like an interwoven roots that touch every part of your life. As you see here, what our conversation here together can be wide and I'm talking about all different things from that little beginning. So it's making sure what you believe, why you believe it. How many times do I say that to you? What do you believe? Why you believe it? And as Alex says, the words you use are the bricks that build the house you live in. Make sure you believe them because you're making up these bricks and you're living in this house.
Yeah.
And so this is very important. Don't underestimate the stuff that we're doing here. And then you finished on to say about life lessons and moving on. Well, here's the teaching. Once you've learned the life lesson, it's gone. It will never return to you again because you understand it and you'll never be self-critical, self-analyzing, self-judgment. You will never beat yourself up because the lesson's learned. And once you've learned the lesson, you're not stupid. You're not going to keep on doing something that's wrong. You've learned the lesson. You won't do it again once you've accepted that lesson. Can I just say one more thing? And this is very important. Learning the lesson, the mature you, the one that's listening to me now, is different to that part of you that we're talking about in your mind, the inner child, because you can nod. I'll give you a lesson. You are the creator of your emotions. You are not the victim. Now, I'm sure you can nod and agree with that. But I say on most videos, does that part of your mind that we call the inner child, does he or she agree with that? Does he or she accept fully, not 99.9%, fully that she is creating the emotion? The lady said fear. Does she realize that she is creating that fear? Isn't that simple? But profound. Sit quietly. Even do it now as you're listening to the video. Just drop your shoulders and say, do I 100%, no doubt, believe that I am creating fear, scared, anxiety, depression? Do I know that's coming from me, from what I think and what I believe? Every part of me. This is so important. It's like you can't be a little bit pregnant. You can't leave a little bit in there.
Yeah.
Because if you leave a little bit in there, it grows back.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you there, David, because I know that I can, we can logically think, it's a learning experience. It's a life lesson. Next time anything like this happens, I'm going to reframe it. I'm going to see it positively. But then there is that other part of your mind that we call the inner child that still holds a resistance, that still says, oh, but it's going to be so embarrassing. I really don't want to be embarrassed, or I don't want to be ashamed in front of all these red light feelings, or I'm so frustrated with myself when I make mistakes, even though that other part, the adult part of me, is saying, no, it's a good thing. So we have that kind of tension. And as you say, the inner child doesn't fully accept that it's a positive mistakes or not getting things quite right or making a wrong decision. The inner child still wants to kind of give you the negative self-talk, still wants you to beat you up. And so we have to resolve that inner tension. So we need to understand it as the adult part of our psyche, but then we've got to teach the inner child that truth as well.
You've used exactly the word that I was going to use. That's why the term inner child is an analogy. It's not perfect, but I do think after 40 years of using it, it's one of the best, because it's almost like you as the parent, you that's listening to this, has to teach that part of your mind, just as Alex says. This is what we call reparenting. You're telling that child. Now that child will resist because it's had a background of this parenting from another source, from their real physical parents, which they believed to be true. So whether it was a glance, or whether it was a cutting saying, or whether it was a bit of criticism, or whether it was a bit of embarrassment, that really was like a dagger to their heart.
And they're holding on to that experience rigidly, and they're like, you can't, it's almost like the child is saying, look, this is what happened to me when I was a child. It was extremely painful. I don't want to experience this again. I don't want to experience this criticism again. I don't want to experience this disapproval or people laughing at me again. Therefore, I am sticking with this belief that I've got to avoid making mistakes. I have to avoid criticism. I have to avoid failing, and it will put up a fight, won't it, when you try to tell it otherwise?
Exactly. You said a very important thing here, because this is why I said you may understand that statement about I am the creator of the emotions, but does the child? Because as Alex was describing that sounded heartfelt, I must say. As you was describing that, the child doesn't believe that feeling they have created. They believe their parents, their father, their mother, their teacher, they're being bullied at school. They created the feeling. I have this conversation with nearly all of my clients. I tell you, it's not a secret. You can do it yourself. I say to them, if you don't think you create the feeling, the emotion, then who does? And they say, well, they do. And then I say, well, how does that feeling get into your body? And I've had many explanations. Well, it comes down the eyes, it floats in the atmosphere. One person said it's like a virus and it attacks me and I can't do anything about it. And this is the education you have to give to that part of your mind that we're calling the inner child. My darling, you create the emotion. And once you've got that, once you accept that, my goodness, this is life-changing. This is the enlightenment. This is what we talk about. Once you know that you create the feeling, guess what? You can control it. You don't depend on anybody else, because you're not ducking and diving and trying to avoid feelings, because you create them or don't create them. And this is the power. The power lies with you. And this is the Wu Wei teaching. I want to empower you. And this is what we have to teach our child. And this is what you have to teach your physical children as well, that growing up, that when they are creating their feelings, that they are creating it as a response to events, of course. And some of those emotions can be very authentic and appropriate, but they are still creating them. And if you can teach them that, my goodness, you put them on a totally different life track, that they don't fall into these type of traps where they are putting the power into someone else, trying to control and manipulate other people to make them feel good.
So we've done a 2-part series of videos on reparenting the inner child, which talks much more detail about how to begin this conversation, how to begin this emotional re-education with your inner child. And I will put a link above to those videos.
That's so important.
But so what you're saying, David, is that we first need to teach the child that if the child is angry, fearful, ashamed, embarrassed, wanting to avoid those emotions, they are actually creating the emotions. They're not being given to. They are not being given to them from some external sources. So that's the first lesson. Would you then say the second lesson is to teach the child that your life and everything you do and your actions are not about gaining approval or avoiding disapproval from other people? It's inauthentic. It's not, it's about self-referral. You need to teach the child that the only way we can learn and grow and flourish and transform and reach our greatest potential as a kind of a team, the adult you, your inner child working together as a team, the only way we can ever do that is not by operating a system where we're constantly worrying what other people think of us or trying to avoid making mistakes, is by taking action, is by doing stuff, is by trial and error. And that is how we will grow and flourish together. So we have to give the child that life lesson as well.
Well, here's the difficulty, though, because this is why there's no blame attached there. Because when you are a physical child, you do look to your parents, you do seek approval. And in a way, there's nothing wrong in that. The problem is if the approval or the external validation is not coming to you. And this is why the inner child then absolutely experiences this feeling that they create because they believe they're entitled to something and it doesn't come to them. And this is why that part of your mind almost becomes frozen like a kernel, gets stuck into that. And the teaching is as you mature as a person physically, there has to be a time in your life where you take responsibility, where you acknowledge that your parents was not always correct. That doesn't make them evil or bad people or terrible, but everything they said to you was not correct. And you have to take responsibility for the re-education. And that's what I believe, as you hear me say on nearly every video, the most important spiritual teaching that I can share with you is self-responsibility. When do you start taking responsibility and stop looking externally and blaming and saying, well, if it wasn't for them, if it wasn't for this, if it wasn't for what happened to me 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, if my dad would have been better, if my mum would have been better, when do you take responsibility? If you listen to those words I've just said, that will change your life. I am very sorry. Believe me, I understand. I listen to it every day. I too have had difficult childhood experiences, absolutely terrible. But you can change it because you are now responsible. You take responsibility. You reparent that part of your mind. You give that part of your mind the life lesson that it so much craves because that little child is not a monster. It's not evil. It's not a devil. It's a little child stuck, looking externally, grasping. And why don't you step in? At the beginning, it won't want you. It'll push you away. And like we said in the videos that Alex said, and it's just persistent. It's just talking to them like we're talking now. Okay, darling. I would always call them a pet name. Okay, sweetie. Okay, darling. Okay, son. Let me listen to you. Let me answer those questions. Let me hear the questions you've got to answer.
Tell me what you're concerned about.
And let's talk about it. So if you still believe you want validation externally, tell me why. Tell me what, if you got that validation, what would that do for you? How would that change you? And have that conversation. And that's the most important thing. We're talking about making mistakes. Don't tell it it's making mistakes, saying, okay, it looks like we're having difficulty in this life lesson. What is the lesson, first of all? Now we're on the golden
And see it almost like as a project, a positive project to like, let's work out how to crack this puzzle together, you know.
Exciting. It's so wonderful to me. And this is what I would call, in the Wu way, this is what I call a meditation. It's 10 minutes. You sit down with your child and you say, okay, let's talk about something now. Let's talk about making mistakes. Let's talk about being a failure. Let's talk about that. What do you mean by a failure? How do you judge a failure? Who judges a failure? What? And you go back, and I will guarantee you, nearly 100% it will go back to childhood. It was, somebody said, I give you one thing. We live in the UK. We used to have an 11 plus. I think we have something similar now. Exams. So a child at 11 years old fails the 11 plus. My goodness, I can't tell you how many times I've heard this is absolutely critical for believing they're not good enough, they're stupid, they're thick, they'll never do anything in their career, they'll just be a manual worker the rest of their life. Because guess what? That's what they were told. They were sent to another stream or sent to another school and they were told that. Now, you can't blame the child for believing that because the child's 10, 11. But you can now re-educate the child. And as Alex said, what more exciting, spiritual, enlightening, uplifting process or a thing that you can do for yourself. You don't need anyone else to do this for you. You can do this for yourself. You are awesome. You are amazing. Don't undersell yourself by what some random person said to you 30 years ago. Don't build your life on that.
Yeah.
You can change it now by changing, working on you. You'll be surprised how quick it works when you keep on doing it. Don't tell yourself lies. Do the golden thread, find out the source, challenge the source. And that's the process. Sorry, I'm talking a lot.
No.
But I'm really passionate about this, because I hear this every day with my clients.
And it kind of blocks when you allow the inner child to hold on to these lies about needing external validation, shouldn't do anything to make a mistake, it not being good enough, so I can't step out my comfort zone. It's like you're locking yourself in a prison of your own, making your world become smaller and smaller and smaller because you don't want to do anything wrong. Your life becomes so limited. I want to flag up. Can I
just say? So we've talked about the child, but if you just imagine when you're limiting your life, do you know who's doing that now?
Well, it's me.
Exactly.
It's me.
You then become, this is the switch. Well, you become your own worst critic.
Yeah, well, you become your own prison guard, really. You become your own prison guard. You've taken you've misinterpreted what's happened in your childhood, and now you're doing it to yourself and you're locking yourself in your own prison.
And I would say from my experience with my clients, you become much worse than your parents or your teacher or whatever ever did to you. You've taken that and you've homed it. And you are always setting the bar higher. You're so critical on yourself. Yeah. You're so judgmental. You're so comparing. You're so looking for external validation. You've kind of turned it into an art form. Yeah. And I think there's something in that. It's almost like you don't want to let go of it because it's so much part of you. You're so bloody good at it, you don't want to let go of it. And this is why you're doing much worse to yourself than anybody has ever done to you.
Isn't that, David, a trait of the inner child or the human-centered mind, as we call it, or what is commonly called the ego, is that it wants to, because it so badly wants to avoid getting in that situation again, it overcompensates. So it protects you by keeping you extra safe, by extra avoiding, by extra not doing, by extra inaction, because it definitely wants to avoid that, whatever it is that is giving it the red light feelings, this faulty belief, it doesn't want that to happen again. But ironically, by shrinking down your life, by taking inaction, then you just start beating yourself up. Then you start comparing, oh, look what they're doing and I'm not doing it. But these are choices you are making. These are choices.
The carousel.
And now you're on the carousel.
And then I'll tell you another thing that I hear very regularly. Well, I'm going to do it to myself first. I'm going to criticize myself, be harsh on myself, say I'm too fat, say I'm too thin, say my ears stick out too much, say whatever it is. Because then guess what they say? Well, if somebody else says it to me, it won't hurt so much, will it? And so they don't understand that they create the feelings. Yeah. And you see how this simple subject, here's the roots, go through lots of things. I could almost take the roots to anywhere, because this is why I'm so passionate about this, because this is the kind of the cancer that's affecting people's lives and thinking, and you can clear it up. Clear up all the confusion. What I believe. Why do I believe it? Where did it come from? Do I want to hold on to that? Is that source something that I want to follow? And these simple questions, when you clear the confusion, get off the carousel and start to take responsibility, this is the most spiritual thing that I can pass on to you. You are awesome. Never, never doubt yourself. Not perfect. Not perfect, because you're a human being and you will have to learn lessons. And what we call mistakes, stop calling them mistakes, just call them lessons, and then your life begins to change surprisingly quickly. This is the beauty of this work. You will be surprised how quickly this changed. If you join our free Facebook community, you see people saying there that they're changing very quickly, not getting it right, and they're not meant to get it right, and they share in the community, and people help them, and they go, oh, thank you, yes, I didn't think about it like that way, and then we're all working together, trying to get a good range of dialogue that's positive but realistic. Not going swinging one way or swinging the other one, speaking truthfully.
So I will, on the topic of our free Facebook Wu Wei Wisdom community Facebook group, I'll put a link in the description below. I also want to flag up, we've done a couple or several other videos which are useful on this topic, and I will put them, again, links to those in the video description below. So we've done one video on not caring what other people think of you, which is very important to this topic. We've also done a video on perfection, the perfection trap, and why if you're seeking perfection, therefore avoiding doing anything where you might make a mistake, how you can get off that carousel of seeking perfection. And so that we've done a video on that. And then lastly, last week's video, which I'll put a link up to here, was on letting go of the past. Now, a lot of people, like this lady said, they are still stuck and blocked emotionally and spiritually on mistakes they've made in the past. Now, this is not to kind of poo-poo or dismiss. Sometimes in our life, we make very wrong choices, which have, very bad consequences. Yes. So we're not dismissing and saying, oh, forget it, it was nothing. But if we hold on to past mistakes, that will then stop us from moving on from our life. And our video last week, which, as I said, we put a link to, covers this concept of letting go and how do we let go and how do we work with the inner child to let go. So again, it's worth you looking at that.
But apart from that as well, it's thinking that we shouldn't make mistakes. And that's why the word mistake is such a toxic
infallible.
word. Yeah. We should be perfect. Other people, and we can judge them, but we can't judge ourselves. And that's why CCJ is very important, criticizing and comparing and being judgmental. Don't do those. You're not in a position to be judgmental. We're all going through this journey together. Not one is higher than the other. There's no hierarchical status here. We will all make mistakes, and everybody makes mistakes. And as Alex says, we're not dismissing them. Say, oh, it doesn't matter. Sometimes our mistakes can really hurt people, and we have to apologize, and we have to hold up our hands and say, this is why I did it, and this is a mistake, and it was a misunderstanding, or I got it wrong. And if they don't accept it, then we can't do anything about that, because we're not perfect. We are not perfect, because perfection is a judgmental. Who judges perfection? Who can judge perfection? Who are you looking to judge you and to keep an eye on you and to say, well, you didn't do that right, you did do that better? Who does that? There's no one can do that. And the physical child believes, a lot of my clients anyway, believes that the parents can do that. But the parents are human as well. You're a parent now. Are you perfect? Can you judge your child on everything that they're going through in their life? Can you come down and say, that's wrong, that's right, you should do this? And this is why you've got to open up this conversation. And I would prefer it to call it, there's a lesson here that you're missing out, son. Let's talk about it. Let's work it through. What's going on?
So if making a mistake and learning, or let's just call it a mistake. Making a mistake, learning the life lesson, moving on, stronger and wiser is the authentic process. That's how we learn, grow, flourish, explore, experience life. What if we keep on making the same mistakes?
You haven't learned the lesson.
So that means we are stuck on the carousel.
Yes.
We either the adult part of our mind or the inner child or both hasn't accepted hasn't taken the time to acknowledge, understand, pick apart and learn that life lesson of what's happened. So we keep repeating. So we're avoiding learning the lesson, so we keep repeating.
So let me discuss this. This is very important. I can't be precise for you, but see if this resonates with you. Normally, the adult part of your mind understands that what you're doing is not right and it doesn't make sense. The child is in control. The child gives you the argument. Well, it's not fair. This is the normal argument. It's not fair. It's not fair. It's not just. It shouldn't happen. They shouldn't speak to me like that. They shouldn't have done this. They shouldn't have done that. And then the adult part of you agrees with the child. He goes, oh, well, that's fair. That's fair enough. And what happens then? The child's in control. The lesson hasn't been learned. The adult moans and the adult experiences all the red lights that the child is creating, but you haven't learned the lesson. And that's why we started the community. That's why you can write into us. We'll kind of try and find the lesson. It's not always easy. It's a complicated lesson. You know, that's why I work with clients all from all over the world. We have to find those lessons. I can tell you the majority of the time the lessons go right back to childhood. Not always, but the majority of the time. And what happens is we build all these barriers like layers on top of layers on top of layers. And we've got to pull all those back. And a lot of people will say to me, oh, this is scary. I don't want to do this. This is the only way that you can do it. Go back to the original problem and solve the original problem, because there's a lesson there that badly needs to be solved. And so what happens is, just to repeat, the child hasn't learned the lesson. The child convinces the adult, and we go along with the same one.
I would think that for a lot of people, it's about not wanting to take self-responsibility, you know, blaming other people or external circumstances that mean that this thing keeps going wrong. So whether it's kind of your business failing or a relationship failing, kind of repeating patterns of things going wrong. If you're in the habit of not taking self-responsibility, not kind of looking for the life lesson, not trying to do things differently next time, then, and you just would rather blame other people or external situations, then you're going to keep on that carousel.
So here are some of the words that I hear daily. Well, it's like opening a can of worms, isn't it, David? I don't want to look in there. I'm scared. Red light, you see. The red light will always stop you. I'm scared of what I'm going to find. I couldn't deal with it when I was a child. How can I deal with it now? How can I make that right? And these are all the reasons that I get from my clients when I'm working with them on video all of the time. And we have to find a way to get around that. And that's the only skill that I can offer them, is let's get around that. Because this is what I find every time. Very rare you'll hear me say this, every time. When we get down to the core, you know what? It's not that bad. And here's the surprising thing. It's not a massive change. It's normally a little tweak. It's normally just the way you perceive something. And it's in your domain. It's in your mind. It's in your thinking. You have the power. You can change this. If these issues that we talk about in our videos are affecting your life, you can change it. You won't do it perfectly. You won't get it right the first time, because you're learning new lessons. And that's the way out of this, is to accept I didn't get that quite right. What didn't I get right here? Oh, I see what I did. I went back to the old way. And then you learn, and then you learn, and then you learn. And that's moving out and getting the carousel slowing down so you can step off and you can find a new route, an authentic route, a route to awesomeness, a route to being who you really are. You know what? I believe in you. I know you can do this. I've got no doubt in you if you want to do it. And I don't mean you as the adult. I mean, can you talk and control and help and educate that inner child of yours? Because for most of my clients, it's not the adult that's in control emotionally, it's the child that's in control. Think about it yourself. I'm not talking about, although it affects work and all like that, emotionally who's in control, emotionally who's running the ship. And I say to a lot of my clients, your inner child must rub their hand and think, I've got you wrapped around my little finger. I can just scream and shout and you collapse. And it's like a child. And this is why I like the analogy. It's like a child coming to you and saying, Mummy, 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 can I? And they always come to you, don't they, when you're at the worst time, when you're at the tiredest, when you're doing something else. Oh, can I just, oh, please, just this one time. Oh, please, oh, please, oh, please. And then once you give up, the child goes, oh, right, well, I'm going to do it more the next time. And if you ever doubt me, go around the supermarket and go around the sweet aisle, and you'll see the children. Oh, please, mummy, just this one. I had this one last week. Can I have it? One more won't hurt me. And then what happens when you give in to the child? When you give the child what it wants and it goes wrong, guess who the child blames? You.
Yeah. But David, the crazy thing is, for some people, their inner child can want to self-sabotage in this way. It can want you to almost keep making the same mistakes because it then allows you to play the victim card.
Poor me.
That poor me card, which then absolves you of any responsibility, and it means you get then attention, support, help, strokes off other people. But when you're stuck with your inner child running your life that way, my God, what a horrible place to be.
But that poor me, Alex, is a direct go to the carousel of despair. Do not stop. Do not pass go and run as fast as you can, like a hamster on the wheel. And you will work as hard as you can and get nowhere. Nowhere. And a lot of my clients spend that. My clients work harder than anybody else. They're not lazy. They'll tell themselves they're lazy, but they don't learn the lessons and make the changes. And that's because here's another reason. Can I tell you another reason? See, I told you. I could go on all this because the inner child doesn't like the unknown, doesn't like to step out of the familiar. It wants things the way that it wants it. And if it has a choice of being familiar and being wrong or doing something new, it will choose the familiar. And we have a word for this in the UK. Better the devil you know. Oh, well, I know this isn't going to work, David, but I've kind of been here before and I know how it's going to. Here's the inner child. Oh, well, we'll go down this road. Well, I don't know. Here's what a client said to me just last week. Yes, but you can't guarantee me if I go down that road it's going to work, can you? I said, no, of course I can't. Can't guarantee you anything. One thing I can guarantee you, though, I said. And she said, what? If you do it that way, it will fail. And she said, well, I know that. Then why are you doing it? Because it's familiar. Failure becomes familiar. The child, that part of your mind, no, poor me, it's a shame,
and then
nobody loves me.
It's like you adopt this role, that becomes a person, you know, it's almost like you thrive on being the victim, being failing, because then it's like you think you're going to magnetize this support and attention and strokes off people. And it's, you know, this becomes your familiar comfort blanket, but it's a trap. And as you say, that comfort blanket just smothers you because you can't live your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, and please stop it. I know you all laugh when I say stop it, but please stop it. It's not working. When has it ever worked? It's not working now. It's not going to work in the future. This idea of castigating yourself, criticizing yourself, belittling yourself, embarrassing yourself, being locked up in this prison. As Alex says, you are the prison keeper. You've made the prison. You lock yourself in the prison. You don't feed yourself. You overfeed yourself. Whatever it is you're doing, stop it. It's not working. You are so blessed to live this life. Expand, flourish in this life. Flourishing is the way of Taoism, is the way of Wu Wei. Be the best that you can be. I don't want you to be the best in the world. I want you to be the best that you can be.
Brilliant. Thank you, David. Well, I hope that's given you plenty of things to think about. Please comment and share below. Tell us your biggest takeaways or biggest insights from this particular video. Tell us what you're going to try next. Is there anything that you've learned in this video that you're going to go away and try this week? Are you going to do that inner child work? If you're interested in working one-to-one with David, he does video calls with clients all over the world. So I will put a link below to
I'm
that.
very passionate though, so you've got to be careful. You've got to be up for it.
I'll also, as I said, put a link below to our Facebook community. We'd love you to join us there and continue the discussion with us there. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget we produce new videos every week. So please subscribe to our channel and click the bell notifications button so you get a little notification every time we produce a video on Sunday. And we look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Bye-bye.